Long ago, in a quiet village nestled between green hills and golden fields, there lived a boy named Ruhan. He was unlike the other children of the village. While they laughed and played loudly in the fields, Ruhan remained quiet, always watching, always thinking, always listening. He spoke to no one, not out of rudeness, but by choice. Villagers whispered among themselves, "He must be cursed. He's a fool. What kind of child says nothing at all?" But the truth was, Ruhan was neither cursed nor a fool. He was wise, far beyond his years. His grandfather, an old shepherd with a long white beard, once told him, "Words are like arrows. Once released, you cannot take them back. So speak only when your words can bring peace, truth, or meaning." Ruhan took those words to heart, and so, while the world spoke endlessly, he remained silent, collecting the secrets of human nature like a monk collecting rain in a bowl. He saw how arguments began with pride. He saw how lies were born from fear. He saw how people often listened only to reply, never to understand. Years passed. Ruhan grew older, but his silence remained. One year, the king of the land sent his men to the village with a royal message. "A grand competition shall be held in the capital. One child from each village will be chosen to travel to the royal palace and present their wisdom before the court. The winner shall be offered gold, a place in the royal academy, and the mentorship of the king himself." The village elders gathered the children. They chose the best speakers, the cleverest storytellers, the boys who could impress with words. Ruhan stood in the back, quiet as always. An elder scoffed, "That boy, he cannot even speak for himself. What good will he do in the court of the king?" But the old shepherd, Ruhan's grandfather, stepped forward. His voice trembled with age, but not with doubt. "Choose Ruhan," he said, "for when the world is filled with noise, the voice of silence carries the deepest truth." Reluctantly, they agreed. And so it was that Ruhan, with a simple satchel and no words in his pocket, walked the long road to the capital. The journey was long, across rivers, through dark forests, and past cities he had only heard of in tallies. But Ruhan said nothing. He listened to the stories told around campfires. He watched how men treated their horses, how merchants haggled, how nobles walked with pride and peasants with humility. When he reached the palace, it was grander than anything he had imagined. Walls of marble, fountains that sang, and gardens that smelt of every flower under the sun. In the royal court, children from every village stood in fine clothes. Each took their turn before the king, offering speeches, poems, and riddles. Some spoke of courage, others of honesty, some even of love. When Ruhan's name was called, the court grew still. A boy in plain robes stepped forward, barefoot and calm. The king, a wise man with silver in his beard, leaned forward and said, "Speak, child. What wisdom do you bring us from your village?" Ruhan bowed respectfully, and said nothing. The court whispered. Some laughed, some mocked, but the king raised his hand, silencing them. "Why do you not speak?" the king asked gently. Ruhan looked up and spoke his first words in years. "Because words have become cheap, your majesty. Men speak before they think. They promise before they intend. I have listened to the world and learned this. A mouth that speaks too much cannot hear the voice of truth." The hall was silent. The king stood from his throne and walked down to the boy. He looked into his eyes and saw no fear, only clarity. He placed his hand on Ruhan's shoulder and said, "You have said more in one sentence than most have in a lifetime. You have not come here to impress, but to reveal. And for that, you shall be my apprentice." From that day on, Ruhan was known not as the silent boy, but as the wise listener of the kingdom. He became the king's closest advisor, not because he knew all the answers, but because he knew the value of listening, of thinking before speaking, and of seeking truth over noise. Many years later, when the king passed away, the crown was offered to Ruhan, but he refused, choosing instead a life of teaching. And so, under the banyan tree outside the palace walls, Ruhan would sit each day, and young students would come not to speak, but to listen. For they knew, when the world is loud, wisdom speaks in whispers.